Good morning, good people. Hopefully we're not going to have any technical issues. I can already tell that we are because the video is lagging with the audio. I'm going to see how this show runs. It's going to be interesting. Horribly interesting. Because you can hear me, and there's going to be a lag. I don't like that. Don't like it at all. All right, let's do something funny.
You so creative. What's your process? Do you know the concept of thinking outside of the box? Yeah. Right, so now take that box, throw it into a paper shredder, replace it with a beehive, and then the surrounding bees is where my process is. Need a different example. Hey, well, you know how multiple people have like a brainstorming session? Yeah. Right, so my brain is in a constant brainstorming session by itself, and instead of a storm, it's a hurricane.
I'm back. And this is going to be one of those horrible episodes that you get to see me try to wrestle with technology for I don't know how long. Did I switch cameras? Yes, I did. Is this helping? No, it's not. Yeah, not helping whatsoever. Maybe it is. I mean, I don't know, side chat. Wow. All right, so the funny thing about this, because I'm going to assume that you can hear me fine, it's just the visual stuff that is not right. Yeah, I updated my computer last night. I changed the resolution to my camera from high to standard, and let's do low. Let's do low definition. And maybe that'll work. I don't know. You can hear me fine. Thanks, Simply Secular Dave. So this is low resolution. Is this going to be the entire show? I don't know. Will I be able to do the? I mean, I might be able to do the after party after show. I just won't have any video with everyone else being on screen with me. So yeah, and the funny thing, if you want to know what the funny thing about this is, of course, I pay for the service. I pay for the service because I stream so often, and that, and you know, it isn't that expensive, everyone. It's only like $25 a month or so, but it does give me the angers. It does give me the angers that this has been working fine up until yesterday. Up until yesterday. All right. I'm centering. I am breathing. I'm drinking a cup of coffee. And maybe I'll be able to deal with this without getting too angry, without looking at myself. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do this entirely ridiculous, absurd show without looking at myself in the camera. And maybe that will make it tolerable for me. Was it the show must go on and all that other happy crap? All right, let's do memes. We'll just do memes. When your therapist mentions your ex by name. Yep. I may not be a Christian, but you mention my therapist. If someone mentions my ex, one or two of my exes by name, I would want to protect myself. Next meme. The starting pay is $40,000. Later, it can go up to $80,000. Okay, I'll start then. That's fine. That's good. And the last meme. Here we go. Really bummed out that soon I will have to stop canceling plans due to COVID and start canceling plans with my usual bag of petty lies. When I had small kids, when my kids were much smaller, it was far easier to come up with lies for not working, for not getting together with people, because of course little kids can get pretty quickly, right, with fevers or, you know, when they're teething. My kids are older. Then they don't do any sports. It isn't like I can say, I have to go to a sports event to see my kids. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go back to regular, everyday, horrible eyes. All right, I'm gonna check out the chat. Simply Secular Dave, yeah, Dave. There is one other update to the computer which I can do, and then after that, everyone, I'm just gonna have to. Just gonna have to contact StreamYard and figure out what's wrong. Let's see. All right. So let's go to so one of the stories I'm going to be schlepping through today. Good question. We're going to talking about China Sea, McDonald's. McDonald's has nothing to do with the China Sea, of course. People are on strike today for McDonald's. We'll talk about that. There's a video. India, part 1, and India, part 2. You think to yourself, one is horrible and one is just stupid and petty. So the first India story we're covering is going to be just horrible, just a horrible state of affairs on the subcontinent. The second India story is just going to be about petty people in facing horrible things. The main story we're going to be talking about is Satan. Satan. We're talking big Satan today, not little Satan, but Satan, all in cap Satan. And we're going to go over whatever is going on with the Trump investigation. So, hey, what's up? So in case you're just tuning in, my computer is not behaving itself. This is low-res Andy, by the way. I don't know what low-res Andy looks like in comparison to high-res Andy. But here we are. This is what we're doing. We have some technical difficulties. Hopefully these technical difficulties will go away magically, just like they appeared magically. I don't know. Imaginary God goes, my bedroom Roku doesn't stream the chat. Fix that too, Andy. I will. with magic pixie dust. That's what I'm doing. All right. Let's do stories, I guess, right? First story, Bismarck, before we start talking about the South China Sea, Bismarck, Chancellor of Prussia and then the Second German Reich, said that no grenadier is worth, not one German grenadier is worth sacrificing for the Balkans. That was during the 1880s, 1890s, perhaps. And my point is, why am I bringing up Bismarck right now, is that people before, decades before World War I occurred, knew that if something crazy was going to start, it was going to start in the Balkans. A variety of reasons for this. The Ottoman Empire was retreating, and that created a power vacuum where Russia, Austria, and other great powers vied, and it was just a powder keg, right? A powder keg. That would be the fuse that would light the powder keg of Europe. That would start World War I, and people knew that if something crazy was going to happen, if there was going to be a major European war, it would start in the Balkans. Now today, as we're looking at the world stage, if there's going to be a major conflict between major powers, there's like maybe 2 or 3 areas that it could start off. And one of them is the South China Sea. And so this is the newest bit. It's a story that we're going to be covering, right, for who knows how long. But U.S. destroyer backs up Biden's tough words in the South China Sea. Links in the description below. Do I have the link to this story? I'm not sure. I know I missed one of the stories in terms of links, but most of the links are down there in the description, everyone. Hong Kong, U.S. Navy warship sailed near the disputed Beijing-controlled island in the South China Sea on Thursday, just hours after U.S. President Joe Biden said the U.S. must protect open access to the waterway. The guided missile cruiser USS Curtis Wilbur performed what the U.S. Navy calls a freedom of navigation operation near the Paracel Islands, asserting navigational rights and freedoms consistent with international law. Lieutenant Nicholas Lingo, interesting name, spokesperson for the U.S. 7th Fleet, said in a statement, the U.S. called the Paracels in the northwestern portion of the South China Sea the Xisha Islands. They've been under Beijing's control for more than 4 decades, despite competing claims from Vietnam and Taiwan. And China has fortified them with military installations. The paracels were the second U.S.-China hotspot. The Curtis Wilbur had visited in 3 days. On Tuesday, it transited the Taiwan Strait, the waterway separating democratically controlled Taiwan from mainland China. Beijing also says Taiwan is part of its sovereign territory, but the self-ruled island's autonomy is supported by Washington. It's the 5th time this year a U.S. warship had transited the Taiwan Strait as the Biden administration strengthened ties with the island. I think it is clear to say if the U.S. military was not there, China would just take Taiwan. I'm not splitting the atom here when I'm saying this. I don't know if you've also noted this chat, observers, lurkers, observers, that in war games that the U.S. plays about the South China Sea and in Taiwan between the U.S. forces and allied forces in China, we lose. We lose a fair portion of the time. Not covered in this particular article, but in other articles. So something to keep an eye on, something to be aware of. If it all goes to crap, right? If there's a major war, one of the South China Sea is one of the areas that it could easily occur in. Is zombie Jesus? Say, I didn't even say hello to everyone in the chat. So let me say hello to everyone in the chat before I get to McDonald's and $15 an hour wage. Simply Secular Dave, hello, hello. Ian Davenport, Blazing Wizard Pub. I'm glad to hear that you're, I hope everyone is having a pip and dandy morning. I'm not really sure what a pip and dandy morning is. I'm pretty sure what a dandy morning is. I've heard people call it, you're such a pip. But I imagine it's positive. It sounds positive. Jessi Bear, glad to see that you're here, Jessi Bear. Ian Davenport. And Scott Duke, glad to see you. Tobin Templeman, hope you're doing well, sir. I have to catch up on some of your songs. You've been dropping music, Tobin. I haven't been catching up with all the tunes you're dropping. Let's see. Do I have Scott Duke? Derek Cruz. Good morning, Derek Cruz. Willie Ignorant. And yes, and Kevin Chaos. Right. I think I got everyone. And Lee. Glad to see that you're here. Simply Secular Dave. One of the reasons that the U.S. loses at war games is because they don't want to show their hand when it comes to capabilities and tactics. That could be part of it. Sure. That could be part of it. Of course, there are war games that, and there's a political aspect to this too, right? Because the Pentagon always wants more money from Washington, because the Pentagon is a big black hole of money. Basically, we've shown in different articles that the Pentagon is rarely audited, and I think the few times it has been audited, they just shrug their shoulders and say, I don't know what's in here. We don't know what's going on in the Pentagon in terms of money. So there could be domestic politics and saying, oh, no, we're going to lose a war with China, so give us more money. So I'd be interested if how the Pentagon expresses the reaction, their war games to the public is different from how they are internally. Another interesting note about, and war games are important. They are important. When the Germans invaded Russia in 1941, the Germans knew that they could only go like a couple of 100 kilometers. See, yeah, that's right. I'm an American, and I'm using the word kilometers. They could only get a couple of 100 kilometers in to the Soviet Union before everything just bogged down, because there was no logistical system. The roads were horrible. The trains were horrible. And so war, and of course, it wasn't listened. They just ignored the war games in terms of logistics. So war games are important. So I would be interested to see, I would be curious to see if the war games are actually different. There are different, and I could actually go a lot more into this in terms of the U.S. military and the China military, because I'm a geek. And I do some reading about this every once in a while, but I don't want to get bogged down on U.S.-China relations right now, because there's India. But before India, let's talk about McDonald's. Today, workers at McDonald's are striking for a $15 an hour wage. Is that a livable wage? No, but is it better than what they're getting now? Typically, yes. Let's take a look at the story.
Do nothing to raise the minimum wage. Some corporations are doing it on their own.
It's an effort to hire workers post-pandemic, but hourly earners say there is no way many of them can get back on their feet without a lot more being done.
You are paying nothing.
Drive-through customers waiting for their meal,
Fighting for 15 and a living wage.
greeted by McDonald's workers in Durham joining a nationwide day-long strike.
The fact that people are standing here fighting for $15 an hour should send a clear message, not just to corporations, to people in general.
While McDonald's says it's raising its entry-level minimum wage to $11 an hour, it only counts for corporate-owned restaurants, not franchises.
They did $5 billion last year during a pandemic, and all that money went to their shareholders, and not 1 cent went to raising wages for us.
Bank of America, Amazon, Chipotle, Under Armour, all announcing minimum wage increases without any federal or state legislation forcing them to do so. Economic analyst Patrick McHugh.
It's certainly an indication of something that we knew for a long time. There are a lot of companies out there that had the money to pay people a decent wage and just weren't doing it because they could get away with not doing it.
But he says by lawmakers not bringing wages up over time, small and medium-sized businesses suffer the most, many of which barely managed to survive the pandemic and recession.
You hit a crisis, and then suddenly it's only the companies that have billions of dollars available to them that are able to raise wages to get folks to come to work for them.
Allowing workers like Nishan Blunt to hopefully one day go to college.
We're the ones who give you your profit, so why are we still getting paid property wages? We deserve a $15 minimum wage.
But who makes that decision? Legislators, businesses, a long way from any conclusion. And of course, Angela, we've got state lawmakers who can do something, and then we've got federal.
Yeah. All right. And digging deeper into the federal minimum wage, 30 years ago in 1991, it was changed to $4.25 an hour for all non-exempt workers. By 1997, it had been raised twice to $5.15 an hour. That's where it sat until 2007 when it was raised to $5.85, then $6.55 the following year, and finally $7.25 in 2009. That's 12 years and no increase in the federal minimum wage.
This Oceanside.
So there we go. Since 2009, there's been no rise in the federal minimum wage here. It's ridiculous. Of course, I think most of us here support McDonald's workers and workers in general striking to get a living wage. There's always money. There's always money in the system. The United States of America is one of the richest. I don't know if it's still the official richest country in the world, but there is money to go around, especially for McDonald's workers. All right. So I just did a quick look online about choppy internet with StreamYard. So I think I'm going to be real. I might close down the show early to try to resolve the issue. I'm just going to restart my router, and maybe that will resolve everything. I'm not sure. I'm going to try to power through the rest of the show, and we'll see what happens. We'll just see what happens. All right. Horrible story. India, part 1. Am I going to do a warning? I'm going to do a warning about this. That's because it's gross and it's disturbing. But I think you should be warned that that's the kind of story this is, unfortunately. This is how bad it is in India right now. Stench of death pervades rural India as Ganges swells with COVID victims. Stigma and cost of wood leave families with no choice but to immerse their dead in the river. This is actually a cleaned up version of the article because it gets pretty in depth about how many bodies are showing up on shores and the crisis really that's going on about all the people dying in India and families just putting bodies into the river. There was a time before when the Ganges was swollen with dead bodies. In 1918, when the great flu pandemic swept through India and killed an estimated 18 million people, the water of this river, upon which so many lives depended, was filled with a stench of death. And so it is again. India's official death toll from the coronavirus pandemic may be just over 250,000, but experts believe the real figure to be up to 5 times higher. And the bodies that have begun washing up in India's holiest river have become haunting representations of the uncounted COVID death. We've talked about this before on this channel, that here in the States, we don't really know how many people have died from COVID. The official number is around 500,000, over 500,000. It's probably a bit higher than that. So in India, they're talking about potentially well over 1 million people dead from COVID. The Uttar, I'm going to pronounce it like that, Pradesh village of Gama Raju Chowdhury, 15, who works on the fishing boats, said recently he had seen about 50 bodies a day washing up over many days. There is no way to know if all the infected with coronavirus, though the government has accepted some are COVID victims. It is widely believed that as the vicious COVID second wave has ripped through the poor rural communities of Uttar Pradesh, leaving death in its wake, stigma around the virus and the high cost of firewood for cremation meant many families had instead resorted to a tradition in some of the villages of immersing the shrouded bodies into the holy waters of the Ganges. Others have buried them on the sandy banks. And so as you can imagine, if you're burying a body on the sandy bank, it will probably eventually get into the river at some point. In case of Shambhunath, the family had no difficulties with cremation, with villagers offering to help in attending the funeral. But after the second brother died, they found themselves as outcasts among their neighbors. When we tried to buy firewood for the cremation, we were shooed away, and no one in the village would help us with cremation because they suspected COVID, said Kumar. We couldn't get any wood and didn't know what else to do. We had no choice but to immerse his body into the river. We did it the next morning at 11 a.m. with just close family. So it isn't just a question of not having firewood. It's the question of being able to purchase the firewood, because at times in some of these villages, if your family known to have COVID or be exposed to COVID, no one wants anything to do with you. Check out the chat. Here it is, right. So living wage is the strangest thing people fight to prevent. It is true, Jessi Bear. It's as if the entire country, the entire United States of America, has been gaslit by corporate needs, by corporate institutions. Americans don't seem to understand other countries do better because they take care of their people. Well, this is a good point too, is that large corporations or industry in general they don't consider workers to be assets, do they? They're costs. You have to pay employees. You have to cover their health care. You have to cover so they're not assets. Workers are not assets in terms of people who own industries. And that's important to point out. So you may think to yourself, oh, I'm part of the corporate family. It's like, no, you're not. What you are is you're an expense to the corporation, and they treat you like an expense to the corporation. Putting a living wage in the hands of people want or need to spend it will do more for the economy than putting money into businesses directly. Exactly. And this is the problem too. Simply Secular Day points out a truth about the Reagan tax cuts. And do I always talk about the Reagan tax cuts? Yes, because that's one of the things that has warped the country so much, is that once companies were able to take so much money in terms of profits, that's when they didn't have an incentive to use that money to spend on investing in their own in their workers. And that's when they were able to give CEOs an insane amount of money. And that's when companies were able to spend a ton of money on lobbyists too. So the Reagan tax cuts really was one of the major events that warped the American system, or the system here in the United States. Brain bug, buzzing. That's socialism, question mark, exclamation points. Scott Duke. See, and that's why you should be president. I would vote for anyone in the chat for president. I just want to say that right now, right? Oh, this is interesting. Are we still calling it gaslit? It feels more like something nuclear, possibly plasma lit. That's a good point, Secular Dave. Well, this is it, Mighty Mouse. This is true. The insurance companies are part of it too. A living wage equals less theft, equals less insurance. Right. All right. So we just covered. What did we do? We covered my crappy internet connection, which I'm going to have to restart my router, probably. So I'll probably be ending this show a bit earlier today. Still going to do the show at 10 o'clock, everyone. Just want to let you know. But I can't do it with this video acting like this. It's driving me nuts. Nuttier, maybe. Let's do the halftime show.
And in this next exhibit, we have someone who's just trying their darndest all week long. We are so proud of them, and they're pretty excited that it's almost Friday. You can take pictures, just no flash photography. Wonderful, and we're moving on.
You know, one of the things one of my therapists told me is that, Andy, when you're engaging with people, it's important to remember they are trying their best. And it's like, really? Are they? I'm trying to hold on to the idea that people are trying their best when I'm interacting with them. That's what I try to do. But yes, it's Thursday. Friday's coming soon. Happy Thursday. The penultimate day of the work week, right? Hey, B, how's it going? I was on B stream last night. Had a lot of fun. Oh, Tesla Ranger. People just know. People just know what gets me going. Jordan Peterson. He is trying his best. He just has a brain. He just has a head full of angry, wet squirrels. That's what he has. That's what I'll say with Jordan Peterson. Had an entire conversation about the difference between someone. I was on my buddy Nathan Timmel. He does a couple of different podcasts. He's a comedian. He's been on this channel quite a few times. He just wrote a book, We Are 100, which is a great book, by the way. But there's a difference between someone like Joe Rogan, who is, I think, and there's someone different between Joe Rogan over here and Ben Shapiro at the other end. I think Ben Shapiro knows what he's doing, making an active effort, and doesn't care. He is willing to spout out lies and false facts just to make a buck. Dave Rubin's also in that category. You have Joe Rogan, who's just a useful idiot, basically, who has who's just a shitty skeptic and a shitty humanist. And then somewhere in between those two, I think, is Jordan Peterson, where he's just, oh, okay, so that's it. All right, I said, Jordan Peterson, that's right. JP has been diagnosed with schizoid disorder. Okay, so that, I was not aware of that, and that's a thought disorder, right? So schizoid disorder, I believe, is a personality disorder that people who have it could develop. I'm trying to remember my abnormal psychology course from 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And schizoid disorder, I believe, doesn't always develop into full-blown schizophrenia, but it's kind of like that, a thought disorder. Tell me if I'm wrong, Mighty Mouse. But I think I remember my abnormal psychology class from years ago. All right. Mighty Mouse. I hear what you're saying, Mighty Mouse. Sorry, we gotta go to a next story because I could easily get diverted into talking about Peterson for like the rest of the show. and I don't want to do that. So that was our first India story. That was like, I cannot believe how horrible things are going in India. I feel so sorry for the people over there. And then here's a story about the government. True story. I did some. I had to click on it. I had to click the source. A journalist from the province of Manipuri, an activist arrested under the NSA, which is not our NSA. It's the Indian NSA on the subcontinent, for FB posts rejecting cow dung and urine as cure for COVID-19. Oh, my fictitious God, you are seeing this correctly. And people were arrested. 2 people were arrested for saying basically cow dung and cow urine are not cures for COVID-19 in India. They were granted bail for their social media posts, but the government subsequently invoked the NSA to re-arrest them. Yeah, let's go into this crazy story. Impal, the Manipur police have re-arrested journalist Wankham and activist Leakambam under the National Security Act, after they had been granted bail for an early arrest for their allegedly derisive social media posts on state BJP chief Singh. According to his demise to COVID-19 last week, police sources said the duo, both in their 40s, were arrested on Thursday after they took to Facebook to extend their condolences, while also writing that cow dung and cow urine was no cure for COVID-19 in 2 separate posts. Several BJP leaders, and that's basically the BJP, for all those of you who don't know, are the Hindu fascists. We'll just call them Hindu fascists. Several BJP leaders have in the past made claims about the efficacy of cow urine as a preventative to various diseases, including COVID-19. We covered this. We covered the story about how there are people just washing themselves with cow urine and cow dung, thinking that it protects them against COVID-19. The Saffron Party's state vice president, Singh, and Observer Secretary Mehta filed a complaint against the 2 people who were arrested, after which the police picked them up from their residences in Impal. They were granted bail on Monday, but the government subsequently invoked the NSA to rearrest them. The district magistrate of Impal West said that in his order that the 2 might resume activities which are prejudicial to the security of the state and the maintenance of public order on being released in jail. Oh, it's you got to maintain public order. Isn't that what fascists always love to say? It's like, we have to maintain public order. That's why we're going to stomp on your rights, because you're saying things that make us look like idiots. Earlier too, Wankham, associated with the news portal Frontline Manipur, had faced arrest on 2 occasions for criticism of the BJP. And so this other gentleman, Arendro, is the convener of the political outfit People. So it's basically a political attack by the BJP, by Hindu fascists, because there were 2 people who went onto Facebook after giving their condolences for a BJP party member who died from COVID-19, for mentioning the fact that, hey, by the way, cow urine and cow poo, they're not going to save you from COVID-19. These guys were arrested for doing that in India. And that's just some of the craziness that's going on in India right now. World's largest democracy. Sammy Jenkins, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. Yes, they do. They do have Trump too. His name is Modi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I forget what his last name, but Modi's been in power for a while at this point. The BJP, thank you, Tessa Ranger. I'm just calling Hindu fascists, just to keep it simple. Maybe I should just call the Republicans just the Christo-fascist party. I think I will. That'll just be it. The BJP is the Hindu fascist party, and the GOP is just the Christian fascist party. What is it in the feces that they believe is helping? Is like Washington? Yes, it is. because cows, for many Hindus, because Hinduism, it's not one centralized religion. There are many different flavors and variations of Hinduism. And so some Hindus, a large amount of people, do believe that Hindu poo and Hindu urine is similar to being washed in the blood of Jesus. Brain bug, you hit it right on the head. You hit it right on the head. Narendra, okay, so I was so close, Tesla Ranger. I was so close to the first name. Narendra Modi, yep. Washed in the bowel movement of... Very nice. Okay, horrible. That was just a horrible story, everyone, about people getting arrested. And then I'm laughing because it's so crazy. That's what it is. It's just crazy. Are we going to talk about Satan? Actually, Jack Maturko, co-host of the show that we do on Sunday nights at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time, he is trying to get, and he's a Satanist. He's been in the Arizona Council of Big Satan, member of the Satanic Temple. He works as a tech guy for the Satanic Temple. He's trying to get someone on the legal team who's been on our show before, to tell you the truth, who we've talked to a number of times, to come on and talk about this particular issue. All right, we're talking Satan right here. Let's take a look at the story. It's not a positive. I mean, it's not a win for Satan at this point. Appeals court upholds ruling blocking Satanist invocation in Scottsdale. Yes. Actually, this has been going on for so many years. This predates me being active on YouTube and back in the day when I was doing the Naked Diner podcast with Jack Maturko. We've had Stu DeHaan, who is one of the lawyers for the Temple on, talking about not only this particular lawsuit, but a bunch of other lawsuits too. Back in February, this is from the Friendly Atheist, everyone. This is from the Friendly Atheist, links below. Back in 2020, the U.S. District Court judge ruled against Satanists who wanted to deliver an invocation in front of the Scottsdale, Arizona City Council. Now an appellate court has upheld the decision. The initial ruling came after council members spent more than $176,000 to block Satanists from doing what Christians are allowed to do on a regular basis. It's a battle that's been going on for several years. $176,000. What could that money be spent for besides fighting Satanists, just so they get a minute, maybe 90 seconds to do an invocation in the town? It could be spent better. All this dates back to 2016, when the city council prevented the Satanic Temple from delivering an invocation at one of their meetings. The reason they gave at the time was the temple had no presence in the city. The chapter was based in Tucson, not Scottsdale, even though they never asked about that during the application process. So why did it come up only after the Satanists had been given the green light to speak? Seemed like a fair question. Could it be prejudice? Could it be good old-fashioned Christian prejudice? The Satanic Temple, months later, sent a letter to the council warning them against further discrimination. This time they had some proof that the council members were actively trying to silence them, and that the whole "where are you" based question was nothing more than a distraction. Mayor Jim Lane and Councilwoman Suzanne Clapp made several anti-satanic comments to the media that indicate that they wish to impose the county's invocation practice exactly for such impermissible government purpose. For example, Mayor Lane said, "In Scottsdale, we've decided to keep our traditional invocations, and we've decided to send this Satanist sideshow elsewhere." He went on to say, "Not on my watch, not in the best city in America. We're telling the Satanists, hell no." Such forward-thinking people in Scottsdale, Arizona. At this point, the city council had two choices: take back their words and allow the Satanists to speak, or get hit with a discrimination lawsuit. The city never took the threat seriously, but the Satanists did. And in February 2018, they sued the city for what they claimed was violation of the Establishment Clause. Even though separation of church and state isn't listed in, or isn't stated in that way in the U.S. Constitution, the Establishment Clause is a thing. The Satanists, including member Michelle Short, she's also been on our old show, Naked Dinah podcast, alleged that 8 years prior to their invocation request, every invocation given was of the Judeo-Christian faith. After Satanist request was made, one council member, Kathy Littlefield, told her constituents that she did not want the Satanists speaking and considered their invitation taking equality too far. Wow. This is typical for evangelicals and Christians and dickbags in general. It's like, you could hear it about gay rights, about gay marriage, about the legalization of recreational marijuana, about different races being married. And mind you, here in the States, it's good to remember that it wasn't until 1967, I believe, Loving versus Virginia, that the Supreme Court ruled that states cannot bar people from different races marrying. I'm sure there were a bunch of people saying, this is taking equality too far. Next slide here. The lawsuit also pointed out that Lane and his constituents, that the invocations were diverse as is, and to prove it, he referred to the respectful and thoughtful, blah, blah, blah. Next paragraph. The implication was clear. No matter what these people said, they only wanted Christian speakers. Satanists weren't allowed. It was a clear-cut discrimination against a belief system that the council members didn't like. That's why the Satanic Temple called it a violation of the Establishment Clause and the Equal Protection Clause, as well as the violation of the Toleration of Religious Sentiment Clause of the Arizona Constitution. For anyone curious, the city did eventually relent a bit. In 2020, they allowed a local atheist to give an invocation, and he cited Lucifer. Woohoo, Lucifer! Which should count for something. Still, the Satanists appealed the ruling, and today the decision finally came down, and it was more bad news. The judge said the district court did not err in entering judgment in favor of the city. Lucian Greaves, who's also been on the channel for this book, the Satanic Temple, told me this was just means that they're back at square one. We'll reach out to the city to find out how we can give an invocation properly without all of these misfortunate understandings. If they can find a Satanist within city limits, then we'll finally see the city council how the city council responds when they can't use the excuse that someone's not a member of the community. Again, this is a long, drawn-out battle, all because the city council refused to let Satanists speak, whatever the reason. They could have found a way to make it work. Instead, they ended up with a multi-year legal battle. But if religious discrimination isn't the issue, this should be a done deal. Yeah. It's been a crazy couple of years in regarding this issue. Let's see. I'm checking out the chat right now. No, it is another variation of the Satanic Panic. You're right about that, Jessi Bear. Could it be Satan, Tesla Ranger? In this case, it is Satan. Oh, brain bug. You had to go there. You had to go there. Magical divine body excretions galore. I wonder what fluid we'll get from Zeus. Zeus appears in Swan Form. Yeah, I get the reference, brain bug. I get the reference. Right, too much equality, brain bug. That's what conservatives will always say. It's like, hey, you're having too much freedom there. As we pointed out a number of times on the show, Satanists, at least members of the Satanic Temple, are atheists. There have been atheist religions in the past. Buddhism is a classic example, or different strains of Buddhism are an example. And there was actually a strain of Hinduism that was atheistic in origin, but I believe persecution ended that strain of Hinduism. This is like hundreds of years ago, by the way. Tesla Ranger, they can be equal to each other, but not as equal as the Judeo-Christian beliefs this nation was founded upon. Well, nice joke there. Yes. And Mr. Satan will have his day in court. And actually, when we've talked about this particular issue with Stu, this is years ago, mind you, who is the lawyer handling this case for the temple, he said that there is a chance that this goes up to the Supreme Court. And this is what he said years ago. So we'll see if we have a special guest this Sunday. That's what we're trying to do right now. All right, so I'm gonna close the show early today so I can try to get a handle on my internet connection, because it's difficult. If I'm going to turn the router on and off, my kid's doing online classes right now. The girlfriend is probably in a meeting, maybe in a meeting. She might be video conferencing. I think all of this is affecting the bandwidth. Maybe. How is my, I see, since I'm looking at the camera and not right in my screen, is my, I hope my video is doing okay. It seems to be doing better now. I don't know. All right. Freedom. Yeah, we got that's our main export right there. Freedom. All right, let's do a funny video and put a bow on the show. Hitting buttons. Yeah, so that was it. That was the last video of the show. Well, it's not the last video because I do the thank you video for everyone. So once again, I'm going to try to get a handle on my internet connection in the next 15 minutes before the show starts, before the after show starts. We'll see if I'm successful. Here's the video thanking members and patrons